Both our readings from the book of Jeremiah this morning and also our gospel story from Luke's gospel have something to say to us about faith and what faith looks like. Our first reading from Jeremiah is about faith under challenging circumstances. The background for the prophet Jeremiah's words is the Babylonian exile. Around 587, Jerusalem was destroyed and lay in ruins, and the Jewish people were forcibly removed and meant to go all the way to Babylon in what is present-day Iraq. Not an easy time. In the midst of this exile, prophets arose, some who had a genuine message from God, and false prophets who told the people what they wanted to hear. The false prophet said, "Don't worry, this is not going to last long. God will bring you home soon, and before you know it, you'll be back in Jerusalem, and things will be just like the good old days." But Jeremiah's message was a little different. He told them the truth, but a truth that was far from comforting. They would be in Babylon for a very long time, Jeremiah told them, generations, in fact. So, he said to the people in exile, build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat what they produce, take wives and have sons and daughters, multiply there and do not decrease. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. That was not what the people of God wanted to hear. What they longed for was a quick fix, a promise that God would deliver them right away. But Jeremiah doesn't give them that. In essence, Jeremiah says, you are on God's time now, and God's time, unlike our time, can take a very long time to unfold. So, Jeremiah tells them, settle in, put down roots, try to bloom where you have been planted. Act as if this place of exile is your home. Build lives there. Pray for the city, even if it is the city of your captors, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. And trust that God is here with you in the same way that God was with you in Jerusalem. All of that for Jeremiah is what it meant to be faithful for the time being, until the people of God at last would return to their home in Jerusalem. There is an old English word. It's not a word that gets used very often today, but it's an old English word for this kind of faithfulness, this faithfulness that Jeremiah is describing. And the word is steadfast or steadfastness. Steadfastness. It literally means holding fast to your stead, holding fast to your place, even when life is uncertain, even when you feel far away from home. For faithfulness, Jeremiah reminds us, it isn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything is okay when it's not, or putting on a happy face. Faithfulness is about showing up to what is, trusting that God can be found even in the hardest places, those places in our lives and in our world where we feel like we're living in exile. The spiritual writer Esther de Waal, in her book Seeking God, The Way of St. Benedict, describes the Benedictine vow of stability as accepting this particular community, this place, and these people, this and no other, as the way to God. I think this is also what Jeremiah is inviting people to do, to find God not in some ideal future, but right where we are. So don't run, he says. Don't give up. stay present, and find a way to be faithful wherever you are. This story we just heard, this story from Jeremiah of exile and endurance, held deep meaning for the parish I served before coming to St. Thomas, St. Peter's Parish in Seattle. St. Peter's was founded at the beginning of the 20th century as a community for Japanese Anglican immigrants. In the decades after its founding, the congregation grew and flourished, even buying a plot of land on South King Street in Seattle and building a new church in the middle of the Great Depression. But only a few years later, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, the entire congregation, along with 120,000 other Japanese Americans on the west coast of the United States, was exiled to a concentration camp in a desolate corner of the Idaho desert. Each family was allowed to bring just 2 suitcases, and everything else they had to leave behind. For 3 long years, behind barbed wire and under armed guard, the congregation lived in a place that was barren and desolate and harsh, freezing in winter, scorching in summer. Parishioners who lived through this time, especially children, remembered how sand blew constantly through the cracks of their barracks and covered everything. And like the people of God in Babylon, they had no idea if or when they would ever be able to return home. Their faith in both God and their country was tested in a way that most of us probably can't imagine. And yet, without minimizing the profound injustice and violation of rights committed against them, and yet they remained faithful. Children went to school, kids played baseball on dusty fields and celebrated birthday parties, couples got married, women had children, and along with other Episcopalians in camp, the people of St. Peter's founded a new congregation, the Church of the Holy Apostles, and for 3 years they kept on being the church in camp. They celebrated Christmas and Easter. They baptized babies and buried their dead. They prayed together, and they persevered until the day when they could eventually return home. That's what steadfastness looks like. Staying faithful, staying rooted, trusting that even in exile, perhaps especially in exile, God is present and still at work. Steadfastness is one side of faith, and our gospel story this morning shows us another side of faith, and that is gratitude. Gratitude. In Luke's gospel, Jesus is traveling toward Jerusalem, passing through the region between Samaria and Galilee, which was a kind of borderland. It's not a place most Jews would have gone willingly, yet Jesus in his ministry so often walks those borderlands, places where good people don't usually go. As Jesus enters the village, out come these 10 lepers in search of mercy. And few people would have needed mercy more. Leprosy was a terrible fate in Jesus' time. Not only did it leave people physically disfigured, but because it was thought to be highly contagious, and because people who had it were considered to be ritually impure, it condemned them to lives of isolation. People with leprosy were banished from their homes, their families, and their faith communities, forced to live in lonely exile. Only priests could declare someone clean again, which is why in our gospel story, after Jesus heals the lepers, he tells them to go show themselves to the priests. Only then could they be restored to health and community. All 10 go, but only one of them, this Samaritan, turns back. His first response to being healed isn't to run off to the priest, but instead to return to Jesus and to fall at his feet and to give thanks. Jesus praises him, a foreigner, and says, "It is your faith that has made you well." So what exactly is Jesus praising in the Samaritan? What does his faith look like? Well, I think what it looks like is gratitude. At the heart of his faith is thanksgiving. His gratitude makes his faith visible and real. All 10 lepers are healed. Mercy is extended to all of them. But the one who returns in gratitude receives another gift. And that is the gift of relationship with Jesus. A gift that heals him not only physically, but also in a much deeper sense as well. Sometimes, at least for me, faith can seem a little abstract. It's one of those words that's kind of hard to put your finger on what it means sometimes. We're told that we're supposed to have faith, but it's not always clear exactly what faith looks like. Gratitude, though? Gratitude is something concrete. It's something tangible. It's something we can do, something we can practice. And what seems true in this story about the lepers is that for Jesus, faith and gratitude are closely related. The Samaritan's faith is expressed through his thanksgiving. His gratitude is his act of faith, one that brings him closer to God, one that I think can bring all of us closer to God. In a few moments, like the Samaritan man, we too will come to Jesus and offer him our thanksgiving. Here, at this altar, we will say, "Thank you," in perhaps the most powerful way that we can as Christians, in the Eucharist. That word literally means great thanksgiving. And this is what we do here, week after week, month after month, year after year, some of us decades after decade. We give thanks because we know that this is the place where Jesus promises to be with us as the bread and the wine become his body and blood. Like that Samaritan, here we bring our pain, our isolation, our doubts, our fears, our whole lives. Like him, we experience healing, forgiveness, mercy, and love at Jesus' hands. Like him, we return to the Lord here, and we kneel and we offer him our gratitude, the gratitude of our hearts. And then, like him, having been made well again, we rise and we go on our way, sent out those doors into the world to live with steadfast hearts and thankful lives. Amen.